Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Matt, Williams and Alan Quinlan with me as always. And I suppose, Alan, we'll come to you first. Ireland team just announced ahead of the big one against the All Blacks on Friday night. If we go through it, no Tag Furlong, Aki and Ringrose in the centre, Byrne, Doris and Van der Flaer in the back row. Team as expected, or which way do you see it? Any big surprises for you?
No big surprises. I think obviously Tyke Furlong not being in the starting lineup is a loss. He'd be a loss to any team. Finlay Bealham has done well the last couple of seasons for sure, but the big boost for Ireland is Ronan Kelleher is back and Rob Herring is back. A couple of weeks ago there was big concern about who would play. Lots of injuries with Sheehan gone, and you know the uncertainty around would Rob Herring be back. He hasn't played a game this season. It's a big call to go onto the bench against New Zealand. They're pretty battle hardened, but having Ronan Kelleher back, you know, it's huge for Ireland. I think he's again, he hasn't played in a couple of weeks. My concern, and we'll probably talk a little bit about it more, is New Zealand have a lot of games played. They're pretty battle hardened throughout the Rugby Championship. They had a game last week, and let's just hope Ireland can hit the ground running tomorrow night. It's an exciting prospect. Friday night game should be great excitement there. But it's a tried and trusted team, isn't it? I suppose Jamie Osborne being on the bench, he earned his stripes in South Africa in the summer, and no Robbie Henshaw on the bench. But it's still a very powerful, strong Ireland team. You know, Henderson being back there and O'Mahony as well, and there's so much emphasis on the bench nowadays. That's a very powerful Ireland bench. And again, the big strengths for Ireland are, I think, that middle five of Joe McCarthy and James Ryan and that back row, Ty Byrne in the back row. So, they'll have their work cut out, but it's a very, very strong Irish team. Mac Hansen being back as well is brilliant.
Matt, the All Blacks will announce their team in a couple of hours, but how much of an advantage do you think it is for them having that game? And of course, that win against England at Twickenham last week. Ireland haven't played in a couple of months. As a former coach, would you like to have played a game before the big one, if that makes sense?
Oh, absolutely, Stuart. The old saying, the game is the great teacher. Playing the game itself is no substitute for, even though the sports science of the Irish is, I think, the best in the world. They'll come out, super ready and prepared for this. And you look through that team, they've all played together for so long. They had the understanding, the combinations, they won't have any trouble. And they've had a good period of time in their camp down in Portugal. Having said all that, New Zealand come off 6 games in the championship. They've played England 2 times before that. They then, had their backup team, for want of a better term, played Japan, and they've played England, which means they've beaten England 3 times in a row, 2 at home in the summer and 1 away. That is a much better preparation than Ireland coming in. The last game they played was in Durban in July. So you can't try and cover over the cracks of that. I do think this is the most dangerous game for Ireland since England beat them in the opening game of the Six Nations in 2019. Everyone's writing New Zealand off, but if we simply say England beat Ireland the last time they played, and now New Zealand have beaten England 3 times. Now, they've been very tight games in small margins, but I think there's a lot of exaggeration in how far New Zealand have dropped. They're not the best team in the world. The Springboks are the best team in the world. But New Zealand and Ireland and France, they can play each other 10 times and it'll be 5-5. It's just the margins between these teams are so small. Here's the other thing, Stu. I've been watching, I was only thinking the other day, my dad took me to see my first All Black Wallabies game when I was 12 at the Sydney Cricket Ground. So I've been watching them pretty much since then, every time they've played Australia or the major games. And certainly the last 20, 30 years, I don't think I've missed watching a New Zealand game. I have never seen New Zealand make so many errors as they did last week. They were incredible, the number of errors they made. Their scrum was poor in the first 60 minutes. Their line-out was poor right through. They got penalised, I think, 4 times for tackling players without the ball. They threw an intercept try They had the line wide open. Tootie had the line wide open through a shocking pass. They should have scored another try, and they still won. So, that New Zealand team is going to be better this week than they were last week. They very rarely play 2 games in a row where they're that poor. So, this is going to be a great game again this week, and a very, very strong New Zealand side.
Alan, Matt says everyone's writing off New Zealand. Are you one of those? Are you writing them off?
No, under no circumstances would I write New Zealand off. I think they're not the 2011 or 2015 All Blacks. But I think what they did in the Rugby Championship, they showed that they're not a million miles away. Scott Robertson and the new coaching team, it always takes a little bit of time to bed in. Are they as powerful up front? Probably not. When you've Retallick and Whitelock there for the guts of 10, 12 years in that engine room, they're different players there. Tupu Vai and I think Scott Barrett in the second row. They're finding their feet. They're actually becoming a good partnership. Wallace Satiti in the back row is an incredible find. What a player. Ardi Savea playing at 8, and Sam Cane has showed a lot of good form again. So they're a very powerful, athletic, physical team. So never in a million years could you write off a New Zealand team. I think on the back of the success 2 years ago on the tour, and maybe a run they had around that period, New Zealand, there was a lot of question marks. Obviously, Ian Foster went. The decision was made to bring in Scott Robertson. So they would admit themselves that they were going through a difficult period results-wise. But I think they're on the way back, and I think they're, not that they were ever gone away. They beat Ireland in a World Cup quarter-final last year. They were a whisker away from winning the thing, and they were unlucky in that final against South Africa to lose it. So you'd be crazy to write New Zealand off in any way. They're incredible players. They have so many X-factor players and explosive athletes. Caleb Clark has been brilliant on the wing for him. Will Jordan is scoring tries. They just have so much quality. Jordy Barrett, McKenzie, we think he'll come in at fly half with Bowden Barrett ruled out. I think where England caused them problems last week was Matt highlighted the mistakes they made and their discipline, but England caused them problems around the breakdown. They were very physical and aggressive, and I think that's going to be a key area for Ireland to, if they get quick ball, they're very, very dangerous. Roygaard, what a player he is at scrum half. He's so dangerous, and they just can't give the likes of McKenzie and Rico Ioane time. These players will cut you apart, and Talea with his 2 tries as well. So they've trouble and danger right across that back line. And I think from a New Zealand point of view, and we go back to that World Cup quarter-final last year, they're going to go after Ireland's scrum again, and that's my concern. Andrew Porter struggled against Lomax. I think when we looked back at the at least three of those penalties in that game, they were very harsh, I think, but they came up with a plan, and they seemed to expose problems on that loose head side, and I'm sure they'll try and do the same thing again. Finlay Bealham obviously on the other side. We think Ethan Garuth will be picked for the All Blacks again. He wasn't available last week he breached team protocols, but he's an incredibly powerful loose head as well. So it's you could never write them off. Honestly, there's so much talent in that team, and I think particularly in the forward pack, Jason Ryan has done a real good job in starting to maximise these guys and getting into a really cohesive, dangerous unit as a pack of forwards.
Matt, Alan Quinlan talked there on Daman McKenzie coming into 10. This actually, he made his debut in 2016 against Argentina, and he's got over 50 caps. You always think it's between 10 and 15. Yes, the majority have been at 15, but he has played 10 for New Zealand before a good few times, but this is the year that Robertson has given him the jersey and the momentum to play a run of games at 10. But then last week he was dropped to the bench for Bowden Barrett, and then this week Barrett's out with the HIA. So where do you think his confidence is at? And where do you sit with Daman McKenzie? Where is his best position?
Stewie, I think that the analogies between Ireland and New Zealand in the out half position are very similar. This is going to be the first game that, since Ireland defeated New Zealand for the first time in Chicago at Soldier Field, where Sexton's not involved. So that's a huge thing. Now, New Zealand have also lost Rishi Mo'unga, who is a fantastic 10 as well. So the backups are coming in. And I think Ireland have an advantage here. I think Jack Crowley has settled in to the Irish out half position really well. Now, he's not, to compare him to Sexton is unfair, and he is not the finished article. He's still improving. We'll come back to him because he has a massive role to play. But McKenzie has a lot more experience at 10 than Crowley does at the level below international. He's played a lot of 10, McKenzie has, for Waikato in Super Rugby. But he hasn't taken that step up into top-level international rugby. We all covered the Virgin Media, the A game that New Zealand played, I want to say 2 years ago at the RDS, and McKenzie was the out half, and he ripped Ireland apart. He was superb that night, absolutely breathtakingly brilliant. He hasn't been able to replicate that form on the biggest stage, which is the top-line international rugby. He had a pretty ordinary championship, not a disastrous. Certainly cost New Zealand the game in Wellington against the Pumas. He threw an exceptionally bad pass late in the game to nobody, rolled backwards, and from that subsequent play, I think there was some scrums and some, wasn't directly from that pass, but the position where that put New Zealand 10 metres from the try line, Pumas scored and what proved to be the match-defining score of the game. So, and he has not played brilliantly. So I think this is come at a good time for him. He needs the opportunity to show what he can do. His conversion from the sideline last week in the dying moments was absolutely spectacular. And that won New Zealand the game. The 2 points of that conversion was the difference between the sides. But he has not been able to stamp his authority on the game the way he does in Super Rugby. I'm a great admirer of him, and I still think they want to give him time. I didn't think Barrett had a great game last week either. But I do think the two 10s who have not played a part in this rivalry since it started in 2016 in that role will prove the difference to who wins and who loses. For Ireland, if Jack can put Ireland in the right position through an accurate kicking game that denies New Zealand their counter-attack, because New Zealand are the best counter-attacking team in the world. We saw that. We see that in every game. They got disallowed an incredible try last week at Twickenham. It was correctly disallowed. It was brought back for foul play that Linnett Brown did. Correct decision. But that doesn't take away from the lead-up to what was an incredible piece of play that was eventually disallowed. So if Jack kicks poorly, Ireland will get counter-attacked off the park. But if he can put Ireland in the right spaces, Ireland's phase play is also the best in the world. Their phase attack is great. Mac Hansen coming back in with that Irish attack is a huge bonus for me because he acts like a second out half. There's the New Zealand say second five. His play as a ball distributor or a kicker was superb, and Ireland have really missed that in recent months since he hurt his shoulder at the beginning of the season. So yeah, I think watching the two 10s, while Test matches are won, and Quinny is quite right, Test matches are going to be won by the forwards. I think the two packs are very even. We can argue and chat about it, and I think that's what makes it fascinating. But how those two 10s actually steer their teams around the field could well determine the outcome of the game.
Alan, Matt talks about the Irish attack and how good it is. I suppose it's gone under the radar. I suppose the last couple of months, I know we have known for it that Andrew Goodman's come in for Mike Catt. Do you see much differing in that sort of area of the game? And also, do you think he'll just add another layer, or highly do you rate him? I know he's worked with Leinster for years, but what is your assessment on him?
Yeah, I don't know. It's too early in the day. I think we saw some moves on the tour in South Africa, and the tries, couple of tries Ireland scored in the 2 games were great intuition and something that caught the Springboks off guard. I'm sure we'll see more tweaks around the attack. But there's not much you can change. I think Ireland are going to.
Is that what you're saying? There isn't too much to sort of tinker with. Just get better at what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I think Andy Farrell, from what we understand as well, is involved heavily in a lot of that attack and has been even under Mike Catt. But again, it's Andrew Goodman, what kind of ideas he brings, the individual decision making, trying to back players. I think cohesiveness amongst the forwards and backs and the whole team has been very good, and it's been one of Ireland's biggest strengths. Everybody's saying it throughout World Rugby. Their attack is, you can analyse it so much, but it's just hard to stop it. Their short passing is really accurate. People running good lines. So positional sense it's superb right across the board, and they've developed that. And there's an onus on players who come in to get up to speed pretty quickly. So lots of good, comfortable ball players up front as well who can give those little wraparound passes, tip-on passes, and run good lines off the back. So their attack has been brilliant. I suppose for Andrew Goodman, the challenge is how do you make it better? What can you... we talk about X-Factor players and real athletes. Rico Ioane, Will Jordan, Caleb Clark, they're different players who Matt has alluded to, and I think this is a very important part of it. If Ireland kick poorly and don't have a really strong kick chase, New Zealand are the best team in the world at the counter-attack, and unstructured stuff, they can cut you apart because they have those type of X-Factor players. For Ireland, if you kick to Ireland's back 3, yes, they can pick holes and they can find gaps, but they don't have this incredible out-and-out gas that can just cut you to pieces. I think it's great to have that, Hugo Keenan back in between Hansen and Lowe, and they're incredibly strong back 3 for Ireland. But it's the collective is the biggest strength. I think will we see much different? I think you can always expect to see a different strike play off a set piece or scrum and line out. Or we've seen him off dropouts, the goal line dropouts, and scoring some tries. So let's hope we see a little bit. But it's hard for Ireland because it's first game, and I think they'll have worked a lot in their training camp in Portugal for sure, and in their preparations for this. But the important part is that physical contact and being. It's not as if they haven't played matches, so they're not completely cold. All these players have played games this season since the season has started, but it's just that collective part, and let's see if they can get it together and make it work early on, because I think they've always backed themselves the last few years. They in a sense it won't be hard for them to get up for this game. They'll feel that they want to put the record straight, and I love the fact that they went to South Africa and won that second test. The easy thing would be down tools, season over, go on holidays, but they showed incredible fight, and I think that determination will be there tomorrow. But they're a very good side. Jason Holland spoke about their attack during the week. My former teammate Dutchie, Matt, you know him as well. Great fella, great coach, and he's intelligent. He'll be they'll have analysed Ireland, and I think they're going to come hard at them aggressively in defence and try and really get up in their faces. So it's a really intriguing game against 2 really good sides.
Matt, Ireland have won the last 5 out of 9, having never won before that, pretty much. And I suppose the wider public maybe say New Zealand have lost a bit of their aura over the last couple of years. Ireland winning the series in New Zealand for the first time, a couple of years ago, and a bit of the X factor. Is that justified or no? Like, do you used to wake up as a kid and all they ever did was win? Yes, not the World Cups, but rugby championships, Tri-Nations, just not as strong as they used to be. But would you feel their aura has gone a wee bit?
I don't know about that, Stuart. It's an interesting concept. Look, I think the aura of New Zealand was always far stronger in Ireland than it was in Australia, because Australia regularly beat them. Now, we haven't done that for 20 years. So the aura, you can't say the aura in Australia is gone, because we haven't won the Bledisloe. I think 2003 was the last time we won the Bledisloe. So, but since Ireland have started beating New Zealand regularly, obviously that aura within Ireland drops. But we have to look at this in reality. I don't think New Zealand rugby's dropped. Irish rugby has risen. So Irish rugby has gone to complete levels that just never happened before. 20 years ago, I was helping with the defence of the national team when Ireland played Richie McCaw's first test at Lansdowne Road. Now, Irish hearts that day did not really believe they could beat New Zealand. John Alomu was on the wing, Carlos Spencer was 10. People did not believe, really, that Ireland could win. They thought Ireland put up a spirited display, but eventually New Zealand would win. People don't think that anymore. People and Irish rugby sports, and this is not based on air. This is on the fact that Ireland have beaten the world champions 4 out of the last 5 times. They've beaten New Zealand 3 out of the last 2. They're one of only a few teams in the history of the game to beat New Zealand in New Zealand. But that is not because the Kiwis have dropped dramatically. And as Quinny says, they are not the team from 2015 around that era where they were just head and shoulders above everyone in the world. That's not the case. But Ireland have also risen dramatically. And that's the real reason. In that process, what you've got to be careful of is that you don't dismiss New Zealand. Because if you do, you'll get walloped. They will come out and just rip you apart. And they can still rip you apart. And
do you think they could still rip this Irish team apart, Matt? Yes?
Yes.
Like they could still beat them by 20 points?
Well, if you look back over the records, and I wish I had them here right in front of me, Stuart, I want to say over the last 9 games, wow, don't hold me on this. The last number of games, a significant percentage of the New Zealand wins have been above 20 and a number have been above 40. We only have to go back one World Cup cycle to the quarterfinal when New Zealand beat Ireland by 40. So this is because they are so potent at scoring long-range tries. Like we saw last week, Will Jordan's try, it was simply a switch between Bowden Barrett and Jordan, bang, try. Satiti makes the break, goes up. He just butchered the pass. If he had put that pass correctly onto his second-row partner's chest, they would have scored. They can rack up a 40 on you very, very quickly because they'll score 3 tries in the last 5 minutes. And so you have to be very careful in that. They're not doing it against Ireland because, Quinny pointed to the Irish bench. Ireland are picking 23 players who play for the full 80 minutes. Look, when did Ireland beat South Africa with Kieran Frawley's drop goal, the last play of the game? When did New Zealand get the win against England in the last play of the game? So you have to play the whole 80, and if you relax, which is what the problem with Australia do, they play well for 60 or 65. If you relax for 10 minutes, they'll rip you apart. So this New Zealand team should not be written off in any way, but in the same breath, Ireland are well capable of winning this game. And this rivalry, which no one expected, this rivalry wasn't there when Alan played or I was coaching 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. This rivalry's only sprung up since 2016. And the New Zealanders still can't get their head around the rivalry. They don't want it. They don't look at Ireland as worthy rivals. They sort of say, where do these guys come from? What's going on here? They expect to win. And this is the problem. Ireland now expect to win. And that's great. It's great for the game because this has been some of the most dramatic and wonderful rugby we've seen in the last decade is Ireland against New Zealand. And I have no reason or no evidence to say we're not going to see another cracker on Friday night at the Aviva. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, the last few have certainly been crackers. What about this rivalry, Quinny? They don't want it, but we have it. Do they not like us as much as we think, or is that just all public? Or do you reckon the players are like, nah, I'm not having this Irish team, but there is so much respect?
Change from probably my involvements or Paul O'Connell's or Ronan O'Gara's, Brian O'Driscoll's. I was on a number of tours there, played against them in Dublin. I don't think we fully believed we could beat them. We certainly thought we were capable of it, but just on any individual day or night, those games were, there was an aura about them. You felt they didn't really know too much about the opposition, and they didn't really
They knew
expect
who you were,
Ireland.
Quinny. They knew who you were. They definitely did.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I just think that they Ireland didn't really grab the attention of and put any sort of fear in them. Of course, they knew Ireland were a good side and there was lots of good players in it, but the difference now, and Matt alluded to it, Ireland have got to a level that's very high, and they're consistently been up there for the last couple of years. We've been very lucky, obviously, with the World Cup loss last year. It was heartbreaking for Ireland, given I think it was it was certainly the best squad Ireland ever sent to a World Cup. As genuine contenders, they could have, on a different day, it could have been them bringing a World Cup home. So, yeah, I think Ireland well and truly know about Ireland, the quality they have, as do the rest of the home nations. And it's over a 20-year period. I think you go back 20 years ago, Ireland weren't favourites against any of the top nations. They weren't. I don't think they were ever favourites. They were always dangerous and got the wins along the way, and had some great wins in Twickenham and wins in France and stuff like that. But they would never have been consistently favourites. They have been in the last couple of years, and they've actually handled that pressure pretty well, to the point that they've been able to get results, even bouncing back after the World Cup, going to South Africa, playing in Pretoria in that first test. It was an incredible, in Loftus Versfeld. They were in that game. Obviously it was, circumstance could have been a little bit different. They may have got a result. They were chasing in the end a little bit, but they never gave up, and they showed that they're quality side. And they proved it in that second test in Durban again, to win that game. What a performance in the first half in that first test. And look, we know South Africa came out and reacted and made changes and got the lead, and then Frawley's dramatic drop goal in the end. But Ireland were in that position, and they put themselves in a position to win the game. So, yeah, confidence-wise, they'll feel good about themselves. But sport can change very quick, very, very quick. And I'd always be of the opinion someone like New Zealand they can rack up a big score on anyone if you allow them play and if you give them time and space. So they'll know every Ireland player inside out, as do anyone else that faces Ireland going forward. Not just in this November series, but come Six Nations as well. Ireland will probably be one of the favourites, given that they've England and France at home. So they'll probably be the main favourite for the tournament. So they're a big scalp now as well, and that's created a little bit of a rivalry. Particularly New Zealand did not like losing that series to Ireland and New Zealand. I was there for the games, and that kind of created a little bit of niggle. We know there was a few incidents in the game, a few comments said, Peter O'Mahony to Sam Cane, and then it continued on then with Ricky Ioane last year and Johnny Sexton. So yeah, a bit of bite and a bit of rivalry, but I think Ireland have stepped up. As I said, we probably weren't expected to beat New Zealand before, but the recent history has been very good. And again, I think Ireland have got better, and it isn't the case that New Zealand have got dramatically worse. They're not the same team, but they're still a serious prospect on their day. But Ireland have definitely got better.
I'm sure Kane and O'Mahony will have a glass of wine after the match on Friday night. Matt, another back row must look came from nowhere. Well, this summer, not many have maybe known about him because he only made his debut as Wallace Tatiti, but he had been tearing it up for the Chiefs. But how good was he last week? And Ireland need to watch him.
Yeah, he was New Zealand's best last week on a whole lot of fronts. His ball carrying was fantastic, and Artie Sevilla, who is their main ball carrier in their forward pack, wasn't quiet. He had Artie always has a great game, some solid games, but Tatiti was just head and shoulders above him. He made one incredible run that I referred to before off a English kick. He picked it up inside his own 22, split the English defence, ran the best part of 40 metres, was 15 or probably 20 metres from the try line. No one in front. All he had to do was pass to his second row part of the volley, and it was a bad pass. But he tackled everything that moved. He hit rucks. He counter-rucked. His ball carrying was superb. He was abrasive. His work rate was high. And then for the first New Zealand try, Mark Talia, he gave one of the best offloads I have seen in Sonny Bill Williams standard. It was absolutely superb. There's another aspect of New Zealand play. I think they're the best team in the world post-contact. So in other words, what does that mean? It means you're a ball carrier, you make contact with the opposition. What happens after that? And they work so hard to get past the defender. The defender's still hanging on them so that the ball is in free area, free space, and then offload. But what Satiti did was it was the old Sonny Bill ball in the hand, but it's a backhander out the back. And he had two players on him, two English defenders on him. It was really superb. Now, having said that, New Zealand made a lot of errors trying to offload, and they also made a lot of poor passes and a lot of poor decisions. But their two of their tries, the two Talia tries, were post-contact tries. That beautiful pass from Satiti and Will Jordan at the other end was tackled low, stayed on his feet, took a few steps and threw a beautiful pass to Talia. Now, there's some poor defence from England going forward, but that doesn't take away from the fact it was all post-contact. Ireland will really have to watch him. I would be really, really interested in, I've got a story about Dutchy Holland, but in Dutchy Holland's assessment of how to play Ireland. Like, he knows the Irish system so well, was a player for so long for Munster and Ireland A, people forget that, and playing through in the internationals, and also went back and coached at Munster. He might have even been coached now in your last year. He was certainly doing the skills coaching down there. My lovely little story about Dutchy and Alan, I think you played in the side, was an Ireland A side. And we played over in France, and we came back. I used to bring you back in the night on a plane. And, of course, Dutchy was New Zealand passport, but had a visa to come into to Ireland. And there was something wrong with his visa, and they weren't going to let him back into the country. Now, this is about 1:30 in the morning after we played at one of the Dublin airport, and everyone just wanted to go home. They wouldn't let Dutchy, and I went back, and I was coaching Leinster at the time, even though I was coaching Ireland A. It's what we used to do in the old days. And I had to sweet talk the guy on the immigration desk, pleaded with him to let him in, and that we'd sort it out on Monday. This is who he was, Ireland A players well known. He eventually let Dutchy back in. We played Munster that Friday night at a very wet Musgrove Park. We were up 2-0. Rog got injured and went off, and I'm in the stand going, we've got him this week. Dutchy comes on and kicks 4 penalty goals in the last 15 minutes. And he walked up to me after the game and just said, "You should have left me at the airport, shouldn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I wish I had have.
He gave you his win bonus, did he, Matt? He gave you the win bonus?
Yeah. No, it was a draw. I think the memory was 12 all, or might have been 9 all draw. But there was a lot of, I was the fun of a lot of jokes there that night from Dutchy and a few of the Munster boys. He's a lovely guy. I saw him in New Zealand a few years ago when he was coaching at the Hurricanes. Great guy, great knowledge of the game. And he'll be very influential in the tactics that New Zealand bring out this Friday night.
Alan, just looking at the Irish 23 again, Aki and Ringrose in the centre, and then Frawley and Osborne on the bench. What's Robbie Henshaw thinking right now? Like, it's pretty harsh, but that's a standard, and I suppose the skill level the Ireland are at, like leaving out players like him.
Yeah, and he was brilliant in that second test in Durban. He had an injury for a couple of weeks, so he's just back. I think was it last week or the week before he came back playing with Ireland. Was it against the Lions or with Leinster? Sorry.
Yeah, he's only played a couple of games, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a little bit undercooked. So I think Jamie Osborne's left boot and that kicking option, and also the ability to protect. The back three, if Jamie Osborne now can play 12, 13, full back, wing, anywhere, so it probably offers a little bit more versatility and a little bit more comfort there around covering full back as well. So, he's a brilliant player, Jamie Osborne, and it's harsh on Robbie Henshaw, and it just shows the level. It can all change very quickly. Robbie Henshaw can be playing against Argentina or Australia or Fiji in the next couple of games. Who knows?
I know he's only back, but did you think O'Mahony would start it all? Or no, too soon?
No, I didn't think he'd start because I think what the way that pack and performed with having James Ryan back in the side, and Joe McCarthy, I think their familiarity with each other and having a player like Tyke Byrne who can seamlessly transition into the back row. I think for Peter, he needed to be playing games, and he got an injury a few weeks ago against the Dragons, so that came against him. And I suspect, this transition around the World Cup is per tournament for Andy Farrell. He's not going to rule anyone in or out. We saw it the last World Cup when he made Johnny Sexton captain at 34, and he took us to the World Cup. I'm not saying Peter will do that or any of the older players, but we have a few players that it's highly unlikely that they'll be at the next World Cup in Australia. Players in their early mid-30s. But look, he's back, and I think it's great to see him back, and he'll bring a little bit of bite and a little bit of energy into the group as well. Getting the game against the All Blacks 15 down at Thomond Park last week he kind of had to prove his fitness, didn't he, and that he was capable. So I didn't expect him to start, but I think having him back in the 23 is this is kind of, you sense, a must-win game for Ireland. They just want to get this one done, and I think we'll see some changes along the way in the other fixtures.
Well, before we wrap up, Matt, it's interesting Alan's saying there a must-win game, or kind of. I asked you before we started to record, both of you, who's going to win, and you both paused and you're like, I'm not really sure. Stuart, Is it that tight for you, Matt?
Yeah, it is. It is, mate. It's look. Even I was just sitting there when Alan, we were going through the bench, and Alan was speaking about Osborne and Frawley. Even the thinking behind Osborne. New Zealand kicked more than any other team in the world, even though we spoke about how great attackers they are. They kicked the ball a lot last week at Twickenham. Now, some of those are short attacking kicks, but they kick a lot. So if you don't have a specialist fullback on your bench, you're opening yourself up. So we can see that Andy Farrell's selection is planning for the 82nd, 83rd minute. This game's still going to be alive then. I think a lot of the tactics, a lot of the background is in favour of New Zealand. We went through how many games they've played together compared to where Ireland have been. Minus Ireland and minus our world-class tight head prop. There is a lot of things going for New Zealand in this game that were not factors in the last few meetings between the teams. So I think this is without doubt the biggest threat to Ireland's unbeaten run at home since they lost to Eddie Jones's team in, as I said, in the first game of the Six Nations in 2019. So I think this is a very even game. I think this is going to go right down to the wire, and I don't know who's going to win. Both teams are capable of winning. I think it's advantage New Zealand, but I said that just like Alan said, the second test in Natal against the Box, I didn't think Ireland would win that game, and their courage and spirit and the way they played, they're refusing to yield. It was inspirational to watch. So when you've got a team like that, you just can't write them off. You just can't write them off. But I do think this is going to be a really tightly fought out, either team can win contest. One proviso: if New Zealand are even as half as ill-disciplined and make the errors that they made at Twickenham, Ireland will win. I'm saying the evenness of the clash is supposing that New Zealand just simply can't make as many errors as they did last week. I've never seen them do it. They can't do it again. If they do, Ireland will win easy. But I just don't. I've never seen them do that. So I've got to say that's an aberration and not the normal.
Alan, if Ireland play like they did in the second test against South Africa at the intensity and the effectiveness, can New Zealand live up to them and compete with them or not?
Well, if they play like they played in the first half, I don't think there's many teams that could live with Ireland if they were that ruthless and energetic and aggressive and efficient in what they were doing. But obviously that turned around in the second half of that second test. That's the intrigue of it. I think both sides, powerful, physical, good ball carriers, particularly up front. They'll want to play. it doesn't always mean you're going to see attractive rugby. But like I said, it was New Zealand who caught Ireland last year, particularly with that try, that Will Jordan try, off that four-man line-out. So New Zealand hadn't done a four-man line-out in probably up on 2 years, and suddenly Joe Schmidt had his hallmark, his fingerprints all over that move, and that was the kind of try that busted Ireland in that second half, made it too much of a mountain to climb, and ultimately they lost. So two very athletic sides. We mentioned it at the start of our chat here. Rugby is about getting out playing matches and getting a bit battle hardened, and you get better, and sometimes you can be slow out of the blocks, but we have seen Ireland before and it's probably down to their training, and get up to speed very quickly. So let's not hope we're talking about something next week saying, God, if we had New Zealand again, because we're certainly well capable of beating them. It's just if Ireland can get up to the level required, which that kind of intensity and pace that's required here, because New Zealand will be,
Quinny, for you, is Beauden Barrett a massive loss for them? Like as a bigger loss than he would be 5 years ago?
No, he's I think he's been in and out of the team. They've met us.
Just because he's not quite at that level, or more so that McKenzie's coming in.
I think when they played the last fly half, remind me again, Matt, at the World Cup. Richie Mo'unga, sorry, I went blank. When they tried to accommodate Mo'unga and Barrett in the same team, Barrett went to fullback. He's an incredible footballer, one of the greatest rugby players we've ever seen. So talented. But I think his impact, he's still so dangerous. So it sounds quite disingenuous to say that he's not as much of a loss, but he is a loss. You saw him last week when he gets his hands on the ball. His intelligence, the way he can bring other guys into the game and do little switch plays like he did with Jordan last week. But I still think McKenzie offers him a real spark in attack. I think just a zip that's so dangerous. So if they get enough of quality ball, they can cause any team problems. But that's up to Ireland tomorrow. We've seen them control the tempo and the pace of lots of games in the last few years, and that's my concern, is lack of match practice. When you're coming up against an opponent who's a few miles on the clock in the last 8 games they played.
Well, we're running out of time, Matt. We'll go for firstly on the predictions.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate that. We've just been 10 minutes telling we don't know.
Yeah, but I gave you 10 minutes to have a think. Do you know what I mean?
Mate, look, this is a knife-edge stuff. And as we said...
you've never sat in the fence, Matt. You've never sat in the fence. Don't start this now.
I'm not going to sit on the fence. Look, every time I felt this Irish team can't win, they've proved me wrong. And I really respect that. I didn't think they could win that second test. I didn't think they'd win in Marseille last year the way they did. They have been on these days, and this is the biggest day of the November series. And not taking anything away from Argentina. Argentina beats New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia, but New Zealand are a better side than Argentina. They stood up and proved us wrong. Finley Bealham, when he was being put in, I thought, I don't know if he's proved me wrong. And this, once, okay, that's an accident. When they do it time and time and time again, you just got to respect that. So I've got to say, I think it's all, the advantage is hugely to New Zealand, but I still think Ireland will win. And why? I can't tell you. They've just done it in the past. They've just defied odds in the past. And I think they'll do it again. I think being at home will have a huge impact on that. And can I just say, I hope everyone watching shows a lot more respect to the Haka and the New Zealanders than the English and the South Africans did. I thought the English were really lacklustre last week. What they did didn't have someone singing the national anthem in New Zealand. They sung all through the Haka. Really, Irish people are better than that. I hope we beat them on the field, but we show them a lot more respect than some of the other countries have done. I thought it didn't reflect well on the English last week at all.
Matt, just on that, you're still very much in pro of the haka and for it?
I used to think it was an unfair advantage for the New Zealanders to intimidate the opposition. I spent an afternoon with a Maori elder a number of years ago. It was not quite recently, I think it was 2016, and I came out of that a much more educated person about what it's about and about what the opposition should see it as. As, you know, can you find it in yourself? He told me, he's a great guy, he told me that it used to stop wars because sometimes they'd look at the opposition, they go, oh, they're a bit scary, we're taking off, we're leading it, you know. But the whole point of it is in sport is, can you accept that? Can you find in yourself the ability to overcome that, the fear that they're trying to put into you? So, like singing and yelling, you're actually denying yourself the opportunity to grow as an athlete and a player. And the other part, John Kerwin came out during the week and said something really powerful. John's a really deep thinking guy. He said that when you look at the modern New Zealand team, there are people with Tongan heritage, Samoan heritage, obviously Maori leading the haka and Maori heritage, and European heritage, but they're united in honouring the Maori culture. And he said young Maoris and young Samoans, Polynesians, Europeans, they see that, but they just see it as what they are, which is New Zealanders. He says it's a very, very good thing for their country and for their society. So I think we need to look at it the way the New Zealanders look at it. And, you know, if it was so match defining, why aren't New Zealand winning the World Cups and why aren't they doing that? It's something that we should respect. And I didn't always think like that, but I do regard myself as ignorant when I did think like that, and I have changed my thinking. And I'd encourage everyone in Ireland to maybe examine it in a different light.
Interesting take. Alan, last word to you. Ireland to get it done?
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Don't look so happy.
No, it's because it's too tight to call. Like, that's the reality. I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think Ireland. Look, you're again. There's lots of ifs and buts about getting up and running. If Ireland are on the back of 2 or 3 games and they were building up to this, you get more of an indication. Yeah, I think with the home crowd being a Friday night, it's going to be a great atmosphere. I think Ireland will find a way to win this. They have enough quality in the side, but I think it's an improved New Zealand side, a very dangerous side. And that probably started before the World Cup last year on the back of that difficult run in 2022 and summer 23. They got it right at the World Cup. So they're an incredibly good side and a dangerous side. But yeah, I fancy us to get the job done.
Great stuff. New Zealand to win for me, but no one cares what I think. So, Matt and Alan, thanks for your time. And don't forget to tune in Friday night, the big one, Ireland against the All Blacks from 7 on Virgin Media.